When it comes to the NFL, being scary isn't just about size. Some players have that extra something, like eyes that say, "I eat quarterbacks for breakfast," or tackles that feel personal. These 20 NFL players were downright terrifying, whether they were feared for their bone-crushing hits or that unshakable, "I'm coming for you" energy. These guys didn't just play football, they haunted opponents' dreams. Buckle up for the NFL's most intimidating legends to ever hit the gridiron. Chuck Bedner, 1949-1962. Meet Chuck Bedner, the original Iron Man of the NFL. This guy played linebacker and center for the Philadelphia Eagles back in the 50s and 60s, which is like playing offense and defense while carrying a sledgehammer in each hand. Bednar didn't just play the game, he dominated both sides of the ball, racking up bone-crushing hits at linebacker and then turning around to snap the ball and flatten a few more guys on offense, all in a day's work. One of Bednar's most famous moments was his hit on Giants star Frank Gifford in 1960. The hit was so hard that it knocked Gifford out cold, sidelining him for over a year, and as Gifford lay sprawled on the turf, what did Bednar do? Stood over him with his fist raised, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Bednar didn't have any sympathy for his opponents. As far as he was concerned, if you were on the field, you were fair game. And if you couldn't take the hits, maybe you should try golf. They called him Concrete Charlie, a nickname that pretty much sums up his personality and playing style. Tough, no nonsense, and built to last. When Bednar retired in 1962, he left as one of the last two-way players in NFL history and a living legend in Philadelphia. His toughness is the stuff of NFL lore, and even decades later, his reputation as one of the hardest-hitting players still stands. The next on our list is the human wrecking ball himself, Night Train. Dick Night Train Lane, 1952-1965. The fact that Dick Lane has the nickname Night Train says it all. This guy didn't just tackle you, he barreled through you like a freight train with zero brakes. Lane started his career in the early days of the NFL, and back then, rules about roughness were practically non-existent. For Night Train Lane, that was just perfect. Why play nice when you can play to crush? Night Train had a tackling technique that was, let's say, uniquely terrifying. The clothesline. Opponents would be sprinting down the field, and Lane would reach out an arm and wham! Send them to the ground, sometimes flipping them backward for dramatic effect. The clothesline move eventually got banned, we can all guess why, but it didn't stop Lane from tackling with brutal force. If you were on his side of the field, you could either catch the ball and suffer the consequences, or just skip the pain and let it hit the ground. No judgment either way. Night Train's intimidation factor wasn't just about his hits. He also had a reputation as a ball hawk, intercepting 14 passes in his rookie year alone, a record that still stands. Quarterbacks quickly learned that if they threw in his direction, they might as well be handing him the ball, and heaven help you if you were a receiver who actually caught it near him. Lane made sure you regretted that life choice. Today, he's honored as a legend, and every time a wide receiver hesitates going across the middle, you can thank Night Train for pioneering that well-founded fear. Following Train is the single most terrifying linebacker of the Green Bay Packers, Ray Nitski, 1958-1972. Ray Nitski is the guy your grandpa would tell stories about, the hard-nosed linebacker of Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers dynasty, who played with all the grace of a bulldozer and twice the intensity. Nitski wasn't just intimidating, he was the NFL's version of an enforcer. If you were unlucky enough to go against him, you'd better believe he was going to leave an impression. Nitski's approach to the game was beautifully simple. Hurt first, apologize never. With a 6'3" frame and a solid 235 pounds of pure grit, Nitski patrolled the middle of the field with a look that said, "Come at me, I dare you." He hit like he was on a mission, and rumor has it that he even scared his own teammates during practice.
The first couple years in Green Bay, he was just nasty. I mean, just snarling at everybody, didn't trust anybody, didn't really fit in very well. And it didn't matter if you were in shorts and t-shirts, you always buckled your hat when you went close to Raymond, because he was going to hit you.
Going over the middle with Nitski lurking was essentially signing up to be a crash test dummy. A classic moment that showcased his intensity happened in a game against the Baltimore Colts, where he squared off with tight end John Mackey. Mackey, a large man in his own right, collided with Nitski in what looked more like a battle than a football play. Nitski's hit flattened him, sending a clear message that Green Bay's defensive king wasn't interested in letting anyone go unscathed. Now, if you think Ray was bad, wait till you see our next player, Deacon Jones, 1961-1974. Deacon Jones wasn't just another defensive end, he was the guy who made quarterbacks fear for their lives. Playing from 1961 to 1974, Jones was known as one of the most aggressive and dangerous defensive players of his time. He even invented the term sack, because tackle didn't quite capture the level of destruction he was delivering on quarterbacks. Jones's ability to sack quarterbacks became the stuff of legend, and he treated each play like a personal vendetta. One of the most famous and feared techniques in Deacon's arsenal arsenal was the head slap, where he would smash an offensive lineman in the side of the head to throw them off balance. This move was so powerful and so dangerous that it was eventually banned, but not before Jones used it to devastate opponents, leaving them dazed and vulnerable. Quarterbacks and offensive linemen both dreaded facing Deacon because he was relentless. He had a goal, and he'd do anything to reach it, even if it meant pushing the limits of the rulebook. Following Deacon is another human bulldozer who turns into a complete monster on the field, Dick Buttkus, 1965-1973. Dick Buttkus was one of the NFL's most intimidating figures, transforming the role of linebacker into something terrifyingly personal. Buttkus played for the Chicago Bears from 1965 to 1973, earning the nickname the Enforcer for a reason. He made it his job to deliver fearsome hits that felt as if he was trying to drive his opponents into the earth. Even O.J. Simpson admitted that Buttkus was the only player he was actually afraid of, describing how Buttkus's intensity and ferocity could make you reconsider stepping onto the field. He said, "Dick Buttkus, Christ, he's the only guy that's ever, I guess, intimidated me on a football field." Buttkus wasn't just a great linebacker, he was a show of pure aggression and physicality. His tackles were ferocious, his stare was unsettling, and the way he played was a whole different level of intimidation. Imagine standing on the field knowing Buttkus was out there, hunting for his next tackle. You'd already be thinking about the impact of a collision with this man because his hits were so brutal they'd leave players rattled, often wondering why they even chose football in the first place. Buttkus's reputation was also built on his ability to anticipate plays and execute tackles that felt like earthquakes. He was known for hitting players so hard they'd go airborne, a feat that impressed fans and terrified opponents. ESPN described him as one mean bear, and it's easy to see why. His opponents didn't just prepare for him, they feared him. He would engage in psychological warfare, giving opposing players the look, a glare that promised pain, and he always delivered. Buttkus can always claim to be one of the scariest, but the meanest of them all goes to someone who is in a league of his own. Mean Joe Green, 1969-1981. Mean Joe Green was the foundation of Pittsburgh Steelers' Steel Curtain defense, a unit that defined the team's dominance in the 1970s. Green's nickname, Mean Joe, was fitting, not only because of his intimidating play, but also because of his fierce competitive spirit. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches and weighing 275 pounds, Green was a powerhouse on the defensive line, using his size and strength to overpower opponents. In a game against the Dallas Cowboys, Green famously lined up over the center and disrupted the Cowboys' offensive rhythm, leading to a dominant Steelers victory. His physicality and relentless drive made him a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks and offensive linemen. He was the heart of the Steelers' defense, leading them to 4 Super Bowl victories and helping establish Pittsburgh's reputation as a tough blue-collar team. But Joe wasn't the only mean one to grace the fields of the NFL. Next up, we have the assassin, Jack Tatum, 1971-1980. Jack Tatum didn't just play safety, he practically wrote the book on what it meant to hit with maximum impact. Dubbed the Assassin, Tatum was one of the hardest hitting safeties in NFL history, patrolling the Oakland Raiders secondary like a missile with a mission. His style was straightforward: see ball, see player, destroy both. And oh, did he deliver. Tatum's hits were infamous for their sheer force. The man didn't tackle opponents, he flattened them. One of his most notorious moments was a brutal hit on Patriots receiver Darryl Stingley during a preseason game in 1978, which left Stingley paralyzed. Tatum's aggressive play style wasn't about intent to injure, but he didn't hold back, and he wasn't the type to apologize for it either. As far as Tatum was concerned, his job was to be the most intimidating player on the field, and he excelled. In 1977, during the AFC Championship game against the Steelers, Tatum delivered another bone-jarring hit that knocked the ball out of receiver Lynn Swann's hands. Tatum played with an intensity that was almost unreal, and his hits set a tone that told offenses exactly what they were dealing with. Any receiver who dared enter his zone was entering at their own risk. But it doesn't stop there. The next person on the list, Conrad Dolbler, was always ready to take it a step further. Conrad Dolbler, 1972-1981. If the NFL Hall of Fame ever added a most likely to start a brawl category, Conrad Dolbler would be the first inductee. Playing guard for the St. Louis Cardinals in the 1970s, Dolbler was the kind of offensive lineman who didn't see much distinction between blocking and outright assault. Nicknamed the dirtiest player in the NFL, Dolbler went beyond the usual limits of tough play, routinely using elbows, fists, and whatever else he could sneak in to get the job done. Dolbler's antics were legendary. Rumor has it he once bit an opponent on the field, though we're still unclear on whether he was aiming for a tackle or just missed lunch. And if you found yourself on the ground after a play, well, Dolbler was right there to give you a friendly stomp for good measure. He had a habit of poking fingers into opponents' eyes, talking endless smack, and generally making life miserable for anyone who had the misfortune of lining up against him.
But I enjoy pounding on them because I like to have them believe that, hey, here's a boy from Wyoming that just handed you your lunch.
Now, if you think that was terrifying, wait till you see who we've got next on our list. Jack Lambert, 1974-1984. Jack Lambert, the legendary linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, wasn't just scary because of his skill. He was downright terrifying to look at. Known for his toothless snarl, Lambert's mere presence on the field was intimidating, even to his own teammates. He played with a fiery intensity that made him one of the most feared linebackers in NFL history. Lambert wasn't about to be polite or play nice. He wanted to hit, and he wanted his opponents to know he was out for blood. Lambert was the backbone of the Steelers' iconic steel curtain defense, and his toughness was legendary. He made a career out of delivering hits so powerful they'd leave his opponents gasping for air. One of his most famous moments came in Super Bowl X, when he famously threw Dallas Cowboys' Cliff Harris to the ground after a taunt, cementing his image as a player who didn't tolerate disrespect on or off the field. Harris made the mistake of mocking the Steelers' kicker, and Lambert responded by lifting him off his feet and slamming him to the turf. He wasn't just defending his teammate, he was sending a message to every player in the NFL. Don't mess with Jack Lambert. Just like the next player on our list, Randy White. Randy White, 1975-1988. If you think defensive tackles are just big bodies who plug up the middle, you've clearly never met Randy White. Known as the Manster, half man, half monster, White made a career of terrorizing quarterbacks and offensive linemen alike as a key player for the Dallas Cowboys. He didn't just tackle, he bulldozed, he mauled, and he probably made quarterbacks want to retire on the spot. White's relentlessness on the field was legendary. He was so quick and powerful that linemen often had no idea how to stop him, so they just resorted to hanging on for dear life. And let's not forget his Super Bowl XIII performance, where he and fellow Cowboy Harvey Martin were named co-MVPs for dismantling the Denver Broncos offense. If the MVP trophy could talk, it'd probably still be having flashbacks. Following Randy is another scary player who has single-handedly destroyed everyone who stepped on the field with him. Mike Singletary, 1981-1992. Mike Singletary, known as Samurai Mike for his focused, piercing stare, was the anchor of the Chicago Bears' iconic 1985 defense, often referred to as one of the greatest defenses in NFL history. Singletary's intensity became one of his most defining traits on the field. Singletary's approach to the game was disciplined. As the middle linebacker, he was responsible for calling plays and keeping his teammates in line. He would study his opponents carefully, preparing not only for their plays, but for the physicality of the game itself. His work ethic was so intense that he would watch hours of game footage, often staying up late into the night to memorize his opponent's moves and strategies. In a game against the Los Angeles Rams, Singletary showed why he was feared and respected. Facing Eric Dickerson, one of the most dynamic running backs of the era, Singletary effectively shut him down, delivering hit after hit with precision and force. His performance helped cement the Bears' reputation as one of the NFL's toughest teams, and his leadership played a significant role in their victory. But unlike Singletary's calculativeness, our next player relied on his brute strength to smash through the ranks of his enemies. Lawrence Taylor, 1981-1993. Lawrence Taylor, widely known as LT, wasn't just a linebacker, he was a relentless force that defined terror in the NFL. Taylor's game was built on speed, strength, and a fearlessness that transformed him into the scariest player of his era. From the moment he joined the New York Giants in 1981, Taylor played every game as if he were on a mission to dismantle his opponents one by one. If there was one play that showed Taylor's ferocity, it was the infamous 1985 hit on Washington Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann. Taylor came charging in with a speed and fury rarely seen in a man his size, and in a split second, he collided with Theismann, breaking his leg in a horrifying injury that ended Theismann's career. Taylor was visibly disturbed by the result, but he didn't let that change his aggressive style. That hit alone became a defining moment in the NFL, one that sent chills through quarterbacks and offensive lines across the league. Taylor's impact wasn't just about the raw power of his tackles, it was his reckless abandon and determination to break through any offensive line. Taylor operated over the edge, both on and off the field. He was known to play through injuries, sleepless nights, and sometimes in states of extreme exhaustion, but he never slowed down, showing opponents that no matter the situation, they were in for 60 minutes of pure nightmare. His style was so disruptive that opposing coaches had to rethink their entire offensive strategies to keep him away from their quarterbacks. Offensive lines would double-team him, sometimes even triple-team him, and yet he would still break through. Taylor was notorious for his trash talk too. He would taunt quarterbacks, letting them know he was coming for them, which only added to his intimidation factor. LT wasn't just an obstacle, he was the opponent's worst fear manifest. Sadly, LT wasn't the only living nightmare other players had to worry about when stepping into the field. Ronny Lot, 1981-1995. Ronny Lot was a safety who played the game with a level of physicality that few others could match. Standing at 6 feet tall and weighing 203 pounds, Lot wasn't the biggest player, but his hits were legendary. He struck opponents with such force that they'd often be left reeling, wondering what hit them. One of the most famous stories illustrating Lot's commitment came in 1985, when he injured his pinky finger so severely that doctors recommended surgery. Lot, however, chose to amputate part of his finger rather than miss playing time. This decision showed how willing he was to put football above everything else, showing his opponents and teammates alike the lengths he would go to for the game. Lot's intensity was most evident during his time with the San Francisco 49ers, where he was the enforcer of the defense. In a game against the Philadelphia Eagles, Lot delivered a bone-crushing hit on wide receiver Mike Quick. Quick was left stunned, and Lot's hit sent a message to the rest of the league. Crossing into Lot's territory meant paying a price. For our next player, his tactics often included whooping asses and taking no names while also looking good at it. Kevin Green, 1985-1999. Kevin Green didn't just play linebacker, he made it a performance art. With his flowing blonde hair and unrelenting energy, Green was part linebacker, part rock star, and all terror for opposing quarterbacks. Playing for teams like the Rams, Steelers, Panthers, and 49ers, Green accumulated 160 sacks over his career, making him one of the all-time greats in bringing the hurt. One of his most famous games came in 1996, when he was with the Panthers. Green went up against his former team, the Steelers, and proceeded to show them exactly what they were missing. With Green on the field, quarterbacks were lucky if they got out of the pocket without a few new bruises. But unlike Kevin, our next player is the formidable and brutal Romanowski, who looks just like his name sounds. Bill Romanowski, 1988-2003. Where do we even begin with this man who made the devil look like child's play? This guy redefined play with an edge to a degree that probably kept NFL lawyers up at night. Romanowski's career spanned 16 years, mostly with the San Francisco 49ers and Denver Broncos, and it was filled with Super Bowl wins, massive hits, and, well, a few questionable decisions along the way. Romanowski didn't just tackle opponents, he seemed determined to destroy them, and if you were anywhere within 20 yards, you were at risk. One of Romanowski's, let's say, iconic moments came when he was caught on camera spitting in the face of J.J. Stokes, which, surprisingly, didn't win him any sportsmanship awards. But spitting was just the beginning of his playbook.
I enjoy intimidating people. I enjoy hitting people. I enjoy winning football games.
Romanowski was the kind of player who'd throw a punch at the bottom of the pile, use an opponent's helmet as a battering ram, and then calmly walk off as if nothing happened. Think you're safe because you're a teammate? Not quite. Romanowski even ended a teammate's career during practice once after shattering his eye socket in a fight. Thing is, love him or hate him, Bill Romanowski made sure you'd never forget him, and if you played against him, you definitely left with more than just memories, probably a few bruises too. A trait he shares with our next player, Steve Atwater. Steve Atwater, 1989-1999. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a defensive back plays with the subtlety of a wrecking ball, Steve Atwater is your guy. Nicknamed the Smiling Assassin, Atwater made a name for himself in the Denver Broncos backfield, where he took it upon himself to introduce every wide receiver to the fine art of body slams. His hits were so fierce that even the Broncos' own defensive linemen seemed tame in comparison. One of his career-defining moments came in the 1990 season opener against the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs running back Christian Okoye, nicknamed the Nigerian Nightmare and weighing in at 260 pounds, was charging down the field. Atwater? He just flung his 220-pound frame into Okoye like he was a linebacker. The result? Okoye went down, and Atwater's legend was sealed. From that day on, anyone running towards Atwater had two choices: brace for impact or find a new sport. Atwater wasn't just physical, he was smart too. He played angles, read quarterbacks, and could lay down big hits without a second thought. In the 1997 Super Bowl, Atwater had a play that was pure Atwater, a bone-crushing hit that took out not one, not two, but 3 players in a single play, including himself, cementing his role as a certified nightmare for anyone coming across the middle. The next player on our list is the kind of person you look at and know that he definitely eats people for breakfast. John Lynch, 1993-2007. The truth is, if you were a wide receiver in the 90s, you probably saw John Lynch in your nightmares, along with an endless reel of his jaw-dropping hits. Playing primarily with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and later with the Denver Broncos, Lynch was the guy who didn't mind sacrificing everything to make sure you didn't make it to the end zone. If a pass went near him, you could bet that a receiver was about to get a bruising reality check. Standing 6'2" and over 220 pounds, Lynch wasn't the type of safety who played cautiously. Oh no, he was more like a linebacker disguised as a safety, with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Lynch's style was pure pure intimidation. He specialized in sending receivers airborne, whether they wanted to or not, and absolutely thrived on making quarterbacks regret ever testing him. One of his most memorable moments came in the Buccaneers' 2002 Super Bowl winning season, when he led a defense that completely humiliated offenses and left receivers debating a career change to something with less physical trauma, like accounting. Lynch's hits were infamous. Ask Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith, who both had the pleasure of getting leveled by him. Lynch's tackles weren't just hits, they were statements. He'd lay out a receiver with the kind of force that would make the whole stadium gasp, then walk away like it was just another day at the office. For Lynch, a good game was one where his opponents left with a lingering reminder of his existence, preferably in the form of a sore rib or two. As if Lynch didn't leave enough of an impact as a player, he's now the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, proving that his knack for crushing dreams can also apply to front office dealings. Sadly, Lynch's retirement from playing didn't take away all of the beasts of nature, as our next player was left to terrorize NFL fields before his own retirement. Ray Lewis, 1996-2012. Ray Lewis wasn't just a linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, he was the heart and soul of their defense for over 17 years. He had a presence that commanded respect from his teammates and struck fear into his opponents. Standing at 6 feet 1 inch and weighing over 240 pounds, he brought both the physicality and the psychology of intimidation to his role. Lewis was notorious for his game day ritual, a dance and intense stare down that would electrify both his teammates and the crowd. One memorable instance showcasing his dominance came in the 2001 playoffs during a matchup against the Tennessee Titans. Lewis intercepted a pass and ran it back for a 50-yard touchdown, sealing a victory for the Ravens. His opponents knew they couldn't afford mistakes around him, as he would capitalize on any slip-up with brutal efficiency, just like the next player on our list, James Harrison. James Harrison, 2002-2017. Now, if there's one guy you never want to cross, it's James Harrison. Nicknamed Debo, after the intimidating character in the movie Friday, Harrison brought a level of aggression to the Pittsburgh Steelers defense that felt like a mix between an MMA match and an NFL game. Harrison was the guy who made you wonder if maybe the NFL should introduce a gentle warning policy, but then again, who was going to suggest that to his face? Harrison wasn't a conventional linebacker, he was a human wrecking ball with a serious knack for ruining quarterbacks' days. In the 2008 Super Bowl, he famously intercepted Kurt Warner and ran the ball 100 yards for a touchdown, a play that left fans in awe and Cardinals players traumatized. Watching him bulldoze through anyone in his way on that run was like watching a tank weave through obstacles. Tacklers bounced off him like they were made of rubber. Known for his insane workout routine, Harrison was as feared off the field as he was on it. His Instagram is filled with clips of him lifting weights that look like they're straight out of a construction site, and his dedication to staying in shape didn't just keep him in the game, it kept offensive linemen terrified. Harrison's hit list was extensive, and he didn't discriminate. If you had the ball, you were fair game. But the one true scary player is the one and only Bam Bam, Cam Chancellor, 2010-2018. When Cam Chancellor joined the Legion of Boom, he turned an already terrifying Seattle Seahawks defense into something straight out of a nightmare. Chancellor was known for his devastating hits, particularly on wide receivers and tight ends who dared to cross the middle of the field. Nicknamed Bam Bam, Chancellor didn't just bring the pain, he was the pain. Chancellor wasn't just hitting people, he was sending a message to anyone who even thought about testing the Seahawks secondary. It was pretty much enter at your own risk, with a high likelihood of leaving with regrets and possibly a concussion. Chancellor's combination of size, speed, and instinct was rare for a safety. At 6'3" and 225 pounds, he was basically a linebacker in the secondary, and his physicality forced offenses to account for him on every play. In Super Bowl X-Loved, Chancellor set the tone with a massive hit on Demaryius Thomas, and the Broncos' offense didn't look the same after that. The Seahawks dominated, and Chancellor's performance became part of his growing legend. Sadly, a neck injury forced Chancellor into early retirement in 2018, but not before he'd left an indelible mark on the game. He's still revered in Seattle, and his legacy lives on as one of the hardest hitting safeties to ever roam the field. If you saw Chancellor coming, you only had two options: brace for impact or get out of the way, if you were lucky enough to have that choice at all. These guys were the biggest, the meanest, and the scariest the NFL ever produced. They were a lineup that could strike fear into anyone, even their own teammates. These guys proved that defense wins championships isn't just a saying, it's a threat. They were the best, and they didn't hesitate to prove why they were the best. Did you enjoy this video? Click on any of the cards on your screen right now for similar content. Thank you.